But anyway, these folks have service and formed their own company in New Mexico, and just stake their professional reputations on this prediction of a big UFO event. But there's been no UFO landing, no mass abductions, no spaceships zapping cacti, nothing. As we warned our listeners long ago, these types of UFO predictions come and go, and almost none of them amount to anything over the years. The real
living and nuts. I'm Art Bell, and it's good to be with you. This is the annual Coast to Coast AM Halloween show. And this morning, this evening, whatever the case may be, across all these time zones, we are going to talk about nothing but ghosts. A rather unlikely topic, save perhaps this weekend, or this particular upcoming day, All Hallows Eve. It's very dark out there. There is no discernible moon, save the dimly illuminating stars. There is no light out there at all, and on this kind of night, of course, anything can happen. Now, when we do a ghost show, there are a couple of things I want to say before we get started. One, I treat the subject seriously, despite the opening laugh for you. I treat this subject seriously, ladies and gentlemen, for a lot of reasons. I've heard too many stories. I've done too many programs of this nature not to treat it seriously. As you may know, over the last year, I have been fortunate in receiving from a number of people photographs of what purport to be, and certainly seem to be, apparitions, ghosts. Something. Surely it is something, and I cannot tell you for sure that I know that there are ghosts, nor that I even understand for certain there's an afterlife. I don't know. I'm continually searching, and I want to know, and I suspect that mimics many of you out there. You want to know, and you're searching. And these stories, and this morning, may help you in your struggle with trying to understand whether there is really something to all this or not. So we take serious ghost stories. We don't. These are probably true stories, and I guess that's what makes it all the more frightening. The fact that they are at least given to us as real ghost stories. So anyway, welcome to the weekend. Welcome to the Halloween program, and we'll get started shortly. A couple of beginners for you. I've got a note for you. CBS Television, this Sunday evening, no doubt when we're on the air with Dreamland, will be airing a special Without Warning program. It's kind of an H.G. Wells sort of thing with regard to the possibility of an asteroid hitting the Earth. I think it may be called Without Warning. It actually is in TV Guide, so I'm not giving away any secrets here. But you may want to run your VCR Sunday evening, and I believe it is called Without Warning, and it's a realistic presentation with regard to the possibility of an asteroid hitting Earth, or being detected to shortly hit Earth. That'll be Sunday night, and I'm going to be rolling a tape on it, and I would suggest you do the same thing. Either that or roll the tape on us and watch that one way or the other. A couple of stories that I thought worthy of presentation to you. Simple little stories, really. Mr. Bell, my dad and I have been doing a paper route for 3 years. We've been listening to your show for 2 now, and I feel this story might be good for your Halloween show. For a year and a half, we've been delivering newspapers to this house that has a large German Shepherd that is kept on the enclosed porch where I put the paper. The dog had always been friendly, always waiting for a pat on the head. Well, about a month ago, I didn't see the dog for a while, didn't think very much about it, till he was on the porch. There he was, one morning, about 2 weeks after the last time I'd seen him. He was laying down. When I entered, he raised his head, and I gave him several pats, and I left. I didn't see him again after that. About a week later, we were collecting for the paper at that house. So I asked the owner where his dog was. He said the dog was very old, suffering from spinal problems. So he'd had to have him put to sleep. Had done it 3.5 weeks ago. This instantly sent shivers up my spine. And now I get into and out of that porch as fast as I can. That's from Josh in Spokane, Washington. This comes from internet. Several years ago, I experienced a disturbing sight. I'm going to relate it as best I can. This gets all the dog stories out of the way. My wife, now ex, was lying in bed next to me. Light from the Circle K store next door was illuminating the room. I was laying there thinking about how good she looked in the yellow light when something black rose up out of her body. My first thought was, I thought I was awake. The blackness moved over me and formed itself into a black dog with glowing yellow eyes and dripping red, yes, the blood-glowed fangs. I screamed and held my arms over my head. My ex turned over and tried to comfort me. The neighbors pounded on the wall. The black dog took its time to dissipate. It seemed amused by my struggles while Brenda attempted to comfort me. The black dog has never reappeared, but I'll never forget it. Several sad events happened since that night. The most notable was the discovery that Brenda was cheating on me with an old high school flame. That's from Darkman in Seattle. Art, this story is not much, but it happened and I thought it was a little weird. When my wife and I were first married, in about a year or two, we purchased a brand new home in Northridge, California. One night around 10 o'clock, my wife and I went to bed. I left the bathroom light on. Now my wife had on a violet-colored night clothing. She was sleeping on my left side. I was not dreaming. I was still awake, just thinking about things. Looked over at the bathroom door. It was open. I saw what I thought was my wife standing in the doorway of the bathroom, and I said, "What are you doing up?" My wife said, "Huh?" The image at the bathroom door immediately vanished. My wife was still on the bed next to me. Weird. It wasn't a dream. The image I saw was so vivid and real, I actually thought it was my wife. As soon as my wife answered my question from her position on the bed, and the being in the doorway immediately disappeared, I told her what had happened. Now, any way you cut it, this was a strange event. I only conclude that there may have been something in the past that happened at that location before the housing tract was built there. The entire valley used to be nothing but horse ranches. Enjoy it, it's true. And then this. Art, I was an Eastern Orthodox priest for many years, and in that time I've witnessed many interesting, if not frightening things. This is one that I'd like to tell you about. In 1974, a close friend of mine lost her father. He'd been very popular during the 40s as a singer and guitar player on the radio. He and his wife had been divorced for many years at the time of his death. He lived alone and died of a heart attack while sleeping in his bed. It was 3 days before his body was discovered. About a week after the funeral, his ex-wife moved back into the house that he'd lived and died in. 2 months after his death, I received a phone call from my friend asking if I could come over to her mother's house. Apparently her mother was beginning to act a little strange. She was concerned. When I got there, the three of us sat down, and my friend's mother related this story to me. She said she was convinced she was going crazy. She said about 2 weeks earlier, she woke up in the middle of the night to the singing of her dead ex-husband. She walked into the front room, and he was sitting in the rocking chair smiling at her. She went back into the bedroom and spent the rest of the night with no sleep. She then told me after that, she'd be sitting in the front room and for no reason it would feel like someone was grabbing or pinching her legs, after which welts would appear on her legs. Also, she'd continue to hear her dead husband singing every night. I told her I didn't think she was going crazy, having had some working knowledge of the rite of exorcism. I asked her if she'd feel better if I went through the house and blessed it. She said it certainly would make her feel better. I took out a small bottle of holy water and proceeded to go through the house room by room, beginning with the basement. Everything went fine. I saved the bedroom for last. Upon entering the bedroom, there was a noticeable temperature difference. It was very cold, and you could see your breath. The mother stood in the doorway, and as I threw the holy water around the room, the mother was thrown backwards out of the doorway into the hallway. When I asked her what was wrong, she said something had hit her in the legs. Like something was trying to push her out of the way. I was a little skeptical until she pulled her pants legs up. And there they were, large red welts on both legs just above the knee. I'm not trying to make any claims as to what was going on in that house, but I can say that after I blessed the house, there was no further problem with visions or physical manifestations. Bit of a primer for you, and a couple of stories sent in. I have many, many more that have arrived by fax. If you have one and you'd like to fax it in, you're welcome to do so. My fax number is area code 702-727-8499. 702-727-8499. Now, this morning, that's all we're going to be doing is ghost stories. You're welcome to make a contribution. You're welcome to light a candle if you wish. And just sit there and get scared. And believe me, before this night is through, we will succeed in doing that. Probably will succeed in scaring myself. I've got my candle ready. Just a brief warning. If these sorts of stories, and some of them are going to be realistic, and some of them are going to be frightening, if they scare you, by all means, tune out. I'm sure there's lots of shows this morning dispensing the usual. And many of you, I understand, would be far more comforted with the usual. So you'll want to tune out about now. Because coming up shortly, the unexpected, possibly the frightening. And I don't really want to scare anybody who's not ready for it. I simply tell you, you will hear stories that I think will convince you, if you continue to listen, that there is a life that comes after. And occasionally, things seem to interrupt the normal flow of the soul after death. Whether it's unrequited love, whether it's a murder, whether it's an unexpected, untimely death, occasionally things seem to interrupt the flow of what ought to come after this life. And those are the stories you will hear this morning. Or in just a very few moments. All right. Here are the telephone numbers. And remember this evening, nothing but ghost stories. If you have one for us, by all means, pick up the telephone. If you're a first-time caller to the program, the number is area code 702 727-1222. 702-727-1222. The Wildcard direct lines, area code 702-727-1295. 702-727-1295. And then finally, if you're east of the Great Rocky Mountains, the number is 1-800-618-8255. 1-800-618-8255. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to the phones. On the Wildcard line, you are on the air. Good evening.
Good evening, Art.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm just fine. Do you have a ghost story?
Yes, I do. My name is Arisha. I'm calling from Santa Maria.
Santa Maria, what is your story?
Well, when we purchased our house, we could not move in initially because one lady died. Her name was Nellie. And for about 3-4, we've been in this house over 20 years now, mind you. And she lived here with us. And my husband...
Well, now, what do you mean? She lived with you as a ghost?
Yes.
And now, how did you know she was there? Did you see her, hear her, feel her? How did you know?
I felt her.
You felt her.
And the room that she died in, which I am sitting in right now, was very, very cold always, except that one day my husband went down the hall, and he's not a believer, and she touched him, and he came back to me and he said, somebody touched me, and I said, it was Nellie, don't get excited. And we used to get her mail at this house for about 3 years. And every time that the mail came for her, we would lay it on the table and I would say, Nellie, here's your mail. And it was for about 5 years she was in that house. And then she left. I just don't know how to explain it to anyone.
Well, you don't have to, ma'am. Thank you very much for the call. She left. In other words, you stopped sensing the presence. No, I understand that. You see, that really is typical. And usually the areas haunted, if you want to call it haunting, and it really doesn't matter, does it? The areas that are affected by the presence of what seems to be left of that human spirit are frequently the areas that that person was killed in, died in. It's really hard to understand. Another aspect of it that I've never understood, one mentioned in a couple of the stories I read you and the one she just told you, is the cooling of a room. I mean, just a downright chill, even to the degree that you can see your breath. It's not unusual to hear that. I don't understand exactly why it would be, but it does seem to trail with these stories. On the Wildcard line, you are on the air. Good evening.
Good evening, artist Andrew in Vista, California.
Welcome to the program.
Okay, what happened was I was sleeping in this mobile home in a twin bed, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, I suddenly awakened, but my eyes were still closed, and I sensed kind of an energy down at my feet.
Down at your feet?
Yeah, down at my feet. It was really bizarre. I didn't move. My eyes were still closed. It was a kind of a positive feeling. I wasn't afraid of it. I felt this energy kind of moving, kind of up on the side of the bed, up towards my head. Well, when it got right up to just about to where my arms were, I decided, well, I guess the first thing, wait. I thought for a minute, it was this whatever it was warm and good. And the first thing I said was, Mom, is that you? And then I didn't get a response. And then I opened my eyes, and there's this figure standing there, just looking at me. It was pink and blue.
Blue.
Pinkish, just pinkish illumination and blue.
All right, so it was not a solid form.
Not quite, well, it was shaped like a human and as tall as a human, but it wasn't quite solid. And I said the darndest thing, I said, can I help you?
People say the darndest thing.
Well, I wasn't afraid of it. I was looking at it wondering, what is it?
Can I help you?
Can
Okay.
I help you? And then it vanished.
And in fact,
Slowly dissipated.
maybe it was shocked. I mean, maybe what you said at that moment just absolutely astounded it, even in spirit form, and it couldn't handle it.
But
Maybe it had been wandering the aisles of large discount stores now for months with nobody ever asking a question like that.
Oh my God! I remember calling my friend, and he just didn't believe me. And
Well, I believe you. Thank you.
All right.
Take care. May I help you? All right, well, it is but the very beginning. And you have connected with the Halloween weekend show, the annual event on Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell. Was that Coast to Coast, or was that Ghost to Ghost AM? Well Welcome, everybody. This is Halloween weekend, and we're telling ghost stories. If you have one, join us. If you don't have one, sit back, light a candle, turn the lights down, and prepare yourself. We're going to do a little commercial continuity here and get it done so we can go roaring through without interruption. Toll-free line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, it's Anthony, Mr. Friday Night from St. Louis.
Well, welcome to the program.
I got a ghost story for you. It's not very scary, but it's worth telling.
All right.
Anyway, I never really knew my grandfather consciously, although Mom said I did love him. He died when I was 2 years old. That was 15 years ago. Just about almost 2 months now.
Right.
And, there was a time period after he died, Mom told a story to me and a lot of other people where Mom was sitting there doing something, like just a couple months after he died, and he came back in full form, fully recognizable, just like he was in real life, just before he died. And he didn't say anything. He was just sitting there with a smile on his face, and the impression Mom got from the apparition/grandfather is that he was sending some kind of message that he was all right, so to speak.
No, that makes sense. And I'm sure the one thing that any spirit, thank you, anything or anybody who has left this earth would want to be able to tell or assure the people who are left. And that is that they're all right. That it is all right. That they're not gone forever. In fact, we're all not gone forever. What I do find interesting is that the apparition appeared in solid form. Not too many of them do. And the one, by the way, actually a couple that appear in our current newsletter are about to appear in the current newsletter. You've got to get hold of our newsletter, incidentally. Let me plug it while I'm at it. It's got the ghost photograph in it. And I may read you the letter that is connected to that ghost photograph. It is very good. A lot of people have had comments on it. The one taken by the Stone Mason. Thank goodness we managed to get it into the newsletter, and I hounded them to be able to do that, and so it is in there. If you'd like to order our newsletter called After Dark, the Art Bell newsletter, you can do so by picking up the telephone and calling right now, or throughout the weekend, I might add, 1-800-917-4278. Now, this is for people with Visa and MasterCharge and such. To get the newsletter, it's only $29.95 for a year. It's 1-800-917-4278. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Is Art Bell?
Yes, it is. Turn your radio off for us, please.
Okay. I have a story. A long time ago, when I was in my teens, I had a dream that I was walking down a road, and I looked to the left, and there was sheep, cattle, and horses grazing, and it was beautiful pasture. And I kept walking on a little further, and there was like a real beautiful old Civil War type looking house, you know, that type of an older house.
Sure.
And there was a lady outside pouring water into a bird bath, and she waved and smiled at me, and she's a very beautiful lady. And I waved and smiled and said hi back, and I kept walking down the road. And there was a white picket fence. And as I walked down the road, the trees kind of made an arch. And as I walked through the arch of trees, not a perfect arch, but just kind of an arch, I woke up, and I felt pure pleasure. That just felt great. And I got up, I smoked a quarter of a cigarette, and got a drink of water, went back to bed.
Right.
And I was walking down, and in this dream, the same night, I'm dreaming, I'm walking down this road, I'm feeling very uncomfortable, and all of a sudden I notice, I look to the left, and there's that same sloping pasture, and I noticed a sheep first, in a long, tall, very unruly pasture. The sheep is laying there, you can see its body deteriorated, you can see the cattle and the horse is dead, and was a pretty picket fence. It was just unmaintained and paint peeling off it. And the house was in shambles. And I saw a man chasing a woman with a axe that looks like an axe on the back of a dime.
Yes.
And hit her in the head. And then she screams as he's hitting her. I didn't see her hit her. I just saw her chasing her through a open window without a screen. And then she comes back, and you can see her just kind of walking almost zombie-like. And she had the same axe in her hand with blood coming out of her head. And this was the same woman I saw before when she was a little more aged, like she'd be about 60 or so. And then you heard a guy scream, and you heard a thud, and I hurriedly walked down and started walking through these trees that were completely, at this time, they were like barren, almost like fall, but it was because of death, not fall. And I woke up, my heart was beating the whole 9 yards. Well, about 6 months later, my cousin and a friend of ours, we were driving along. We were out by the St. Louis airport. This is when it was very much undeveloped. And I felt a strange feeling. And I said, hey, pull into this driveway. The whole thing was a shambles. We pulled in, got out of his Jeep, and started walking up towards this so-called remnants of a house where there was like half of a brick chimney down, and the roof was like down on the ground.
Yes.
We all started getting bad vibes, and as we walked closer up to it, we noticed that the place in front of where that window was, that I saw that axe thing committed, there was like like the thorn tree they used to crucify Jesus Christ, the thorns they put around his head, and you could almost feel something surrounding us. And we never said a word to each other. We just looked at each other and we slowly started walking towards the Jeep. All of a sudden we found ourselves at a very fast pace towards the Jeep. Next thing we knew, we were in the Jeep and it didn't want to fire up. My cousin threw it in a neutral. My buddy got out, kind of pushed it. We popped the clutch, it fired up. We left the place ASAP. And the thing of it was, when we got up to the big boys, of course, big boys hamburgers aren't anymore.
Right.
We shut down the vehicle and it fired right back up. And we never did return to the place, but it seems like that was a very strange situation.
It was, and possibly, what do you think your dream was then? Do you think that it was sort of a foretelling of what occurred there?
We've analyzed it over the years. I'll speak for my cousin and not bother myself, but my cousin is very, 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 very high up at AT&T, and he's a very intelligent man, and we've sat and talked about this. And the one proposal we came up with years ago that it had something to do with the one thing we could come up with, that the dream happened to me, but everything happened that way. The only thing we could come up with that we could all agree on that may be cause of it was what's going on in America economically today.
Economically today?
Yes, isn't that strange and something like that? But, and I have one more thing real quick.
Well, our current economic situation is a little like an axe in the head. Sir, we're very short on time, so if it's very quick.
Okay, when my dad died, my mom started going into she just started deteriorating physically and weight and bags under the eyes and black eyes. And I was down at the place that I was working, a buddy of mine owned, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden I felt his presence. And I said, Dad, don't take Mom, just go. She'll be with you later. The family needs her too much. And it was only about a couple days after that she started improving. That was a very strange thing as well.
Thank you very much for the call. I believe the St. Louis area. Well, it does bring up, though, another topic. And that has to do with the feeling of a presence. Now, how much I can say I have that. There have been a few times during my life when I have felt distinctly a presence. And I don't recall that it particularly scared me, but I was absolutely aware of it, and I'm sure that it may have happened, well, I guess I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I would bet that it's happened to many of you. And you can feel human beings, much like animals, I believe, have an instinctual sense about them. As you can sense somebody's actual physical presence in a room, I believe that the sensitive among us can feel the presence of other things and beings nearby. Does that make sense? It always has to me. And I don't think it's anything all that deep. I think it's just a purely instinctual thing that human beings have and have always had. Some are able to feel it now and use it now. Many are not, because of the noise of modern civilization. It tends to blot out these more obscure, but I believe real feelings. On the wildcard line, you are on the air. Good morning.
Let me turn off my radio real quick.
Thank you. Yes, remember to do that, everybody. We have a delay system here. It's very confusing.
Yes, have you ever heard of about going into a mirror and like saying a word like Inigo or like Bloody Mary?
Or Candyman?
Well, not that, but I've done it before.
Well, I have heard, sir, that people have had very strange experiences with mirrors. What is yours?
Well, I did it like around 12 o'clock. I think it was about when I was in 7th grade, and I'm a little bit nervous.
It's all right. You in 7th grade, you looked into a mirror and did what?
Well, I turned off all the lights. That's what you're supposed to do, and I locked the door.
Yes.
It was late at night, so everything was quiet in the house, because that's how it has to be.
Right.
And I went and I turned in a circle once, and I stared at the mirror and said Bloody Mary. Then I closed my eyes, turned around and circle again and said Bloody Mary. Then I went again and I did it. And I saw this like face that had like blood on one half of the side, and like something hit me in the head. I think it was a toothbrush hit me in the head. I saw it laying on the ground and I didn't see it before.
Odd.
And I've had other friends who said that they've had scratches from doing that. And I've had a friend in the 7th grade who I was a really good friend with named...
No, don't give me the person's name.
Well, not her only. And she's related to Bloody Mary, the Queen of Scots, you know.
All right, sir, thank you. I have heard about this before. Maybe some of the rest of you know something about it. But there is something about mirrors. And I believe there is something about, in effect, inviting something to appear. And it may not matter the words that you use. But if you, in effect, put yourself in a mood of being receptive to this sort of thing, and then you exercise some sort of ritual, in this case, the use of a mirror, you may, in fact, be inviting something in that you may be sorry you invited in. Just a word to the wise. On the wildcard line, you're on the air. Good evening.
Okay, I'm calling from Reno.
Hi.
This happened whenever I was about 7 years old. My dad had already been married about a year. His wife started dabbling into the occult, but I didn't know what the occult was. So, we were going to church, and of course my brother, he went up to the altar and committed himself to Jesus Christ. And I didn't, because I didn't understand it. But once I decided to do this, I had said my prayers, and I told the Lord that Sunday morning I'm going to commit myself to you. And, that happened on a Friday. And so I was real excited about going to church because I was going to do this thing.
I understand.
And I went to bed. And later on that night, I have no idea what time it was, my door was open. It was always open. My parents' door is closed because they don't want, the snoring to wake us up.
Yes.
And I woke up, and there was a bull standing at the front of my door. It was a demon, and it was in a shape of a bull. It was about 4.5 feet tall. And I looked at it, and I just said, God, I don't know what it is, and help me go to sleep. And if I don't move, then maybe it won't hurt me. Well, then I had this really strange dream, and it was very unrelated to what was in front of me. So I dreamt this certain dream, and when I woke up, that bull was still standing there, had horns and everything. And I thought, no, it's not going away. I was thinking this, and all of a sudden it disappeared, and it had attacked me. I was struggling in bed. I was trying to scream, and the worst thing you can do is you're screaming and nothing comes out of you. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was being smothered.
I understand that feeling. You are screaming internally, but nothing will come out.
And I was thinking, what am I to do? What am I to do? I'm going to die. It's going to kill me. And sure enough, I said, okay, God, you're going to have to take it away because I can't do anything. I'm going to die, and I don't want to die. And so it let go. It dissipated. It never showed up again. When that thing let go and it ran out of the room and it left, I just screamed totally bloody murder. And my dad comes running in there seeing what's going on. And I was telling them, there's a monster in here. And it was trying to kill me. And nobody really believed it, but it really actually happened.
Maybe ahead of your commitment on Sunday, it was one last shot, so to speak, of the dark force trying to get hold of you.
I believe that. And one other thing about my mom and the power of God, what I had to deal with was that very quickly she had a 4-foot mod poster. This was back in the 70, 71, 72. Mod came back.
Okay, very quickly.
And it was a picture of the devil. And I wouldn't go into her room, so I asked God to take away that poster. And within 3 weeks, it had torn itself apart.
Thank you for the call. You know, if there is good in this world, if there is God, if there is a presence, a creator presence, then it would certainly make sense that there would be an opposite force. As it can be documented for just about everything else in our life that we do, that we experience, there are two sides. There's good and evil. There's good and evil, for example, in atomic energy. There's good and evil in just about every force that we do control on Earth. So, with the assumption of a creator, a God, a good, I think it's not too much of a leap to understand there is an opposite force, the one we talked about this morning. On the wild card line, you're on the air.
Yeah, you're true about that. Because they balance each other out.
I believe so, sir.
But you can't have too much of either. So I like to talk about what happened to me when I was 15.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we were staying at a friend's house. Me and my mom were staying at a friend's house.
Yes.
For a little while.
Right.
So we find a new place to live.
Yes, where are you, by the way?
I'm in Long Beach.
Long Beach, all right.
Okay, and see, certain times of the year, there's a certain part of the neighborhood in Broadway and Long Beach and everything.
Yes.
It's like a vortex.
A vortex.
Yeah, it's like a vortex. You know, certain things come through. You know, basically it's like a main doorway. You know, a main hallway. You find out different things. Like one time, my mother, seemed like a little man crawling on her arm. And she woke up.
On her arm?
Yeah, on her arm. He's all silver. They look like deep footprints. She woke us up to see these little footprints on her arm.
Really?
And I looked down and said, yeah, they're footprints, Ma. Yeah, she figured she's joking. Went back to sleep. And I asked her if you think it probably weighed around 40 pounds for such deep footprints.
On her arm. It actually left footprints on her arm.
Yeah, left footprints on her arm.
Wow. All right, thank you very much for the call. Now, what was that? What would do that? Well, there are those who would suggest this woman was dreaming. She was asleep, and she had such a vivid dream that the power of her mind actually caused those that physical evidence that he just talked about, footprints actually on her arm. But sometimes it's a little difficult to separate the real occurrence from the one in our mind. Maybe there is not a difference. Maybe that which does occur in our mind is in fact real. Does that occur to you? The distinction between that which we dream and that which we experience while awake, it's really, when you examine it, a very, very small distinction. This is the Halloween weekend show from Ghost to Ghost AM. Good morning. Welcome to Ghost AM. It is the annual Halloween show, and we are telling ghost stories. It is Halloween weekend. Indeed, it is the weekend, so settle in, light a candle, dim the lights, if you dare. Art, this story is supposed to be a true one. Dick and Clyde had been friends since August of 1918, nearly 15 years. During their friendship, they had done some pretty remarkable things. However, none can compare with the prank they pulled on their girlfriends, Betty Lou and Mildred, on October 31st, 1933. October 24th, 1933, Betty Lou and Mildred were excited about the barn dance and hayride they were about to go on Halloween night. The girls just couldn't conjure up a prank to pull on Clyde and Dick that could measure up to the boys hanging a dressmaker's doll on Window Johnson's old dead tree in her front yard. Whatever that prank would be, it would have to be very good. During lunch, the boys propositioned them with a dare. The agreement was for the girls each to drive a stake into a grave at midnight on Halloween night, and the boys would pay them $10. The girls agreed, thinking they could come back with some gruesome horror stories to scare the boys out of their wits. October 31st, 1933, 8 o'clock at night. The foursome was having a great time at the dance. The boys kept asking the girls if they're sure they wanted to go through with the agreement. The girls were positive. During the hayride, the group leader was telling a story about a jealous husband's outrage with regard to his wife after finding her with a lover. During his panic, he murdered her, chopped her into small parts, and tried to dispose of her body. All the remains found were her two arms, now buried in Gracelawn Cemetery. Gracelawn Cemetery? The graveyard the girls were about to be at this very night. Mildred was in a frenzy. How was she going to handle this? Why did she let them talk her into it? Mildred came back to her senses. The hayride comes to an end. She could hear Betty Lou and the boys planning out the evening. They all were to meet at the general store at 1 a.m. after the graveyard incident. The time finally came. Mildred and Betty Lou found themselves at the graveyard. Betty Lou was to pound her stake into grave number 12, and Mildred into number 56. They decided to just meet at the back of the store. Betty Lou pounded her stake as directed and gave a signaling whistle to Mildred. Betty Lou was finished. She headed back. Mildred pounded her stake and got up to leave. Something was tugging her skirt. She screamed for help and nobody came. She tried harder to get away, but it was useless. At 1 a.m., Betty Lou and the boys were worried about Mildred. Why hadn't she shown up? Had she been hurt? They decided to go back to the graveyard, but it was the dead of night and too dark to see a thing. They came to the conclusion that she was tired and went home. November 1st, 1933, the Jonesboro Morning Bee read, "Girl found dead in Gracelawn Cemetery with stake through her dress." That's from Ron in Seattle. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Hi. I'll make that the wildcard line. Hello? No, you're not. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm calling from Santa Rosa,
Santa Rosa. KSRO. Great.
and I will tell you the truth. That I know, as sure as I know my name, that ghosts, poltergeists, and past life visions are all one and the same. They're all agents of Satan. In 1989, on Thanksgiving Day, my mother-in-law died. And I hadn't spoken to her for 3 years because I'd had the confinement nerve of questioning her about Grandpa drinking and driving with my son in the car, and she never spoke to me again. And the next day, my husband arrived home, and he'd been with her at the moment of her death, and she'd thrown back the blankets as if to leave, and she was clouded with morphine. And he and I stood outside on the sidewalk and watched this cloud about 50 feet long and 40 feet wide, just about the height of the telephone poles. It was brown, dirty mist. And we watched it dissipate in front of our eyes. And I made a joke and I said, maybe that's your mother's spirit. And about a week later, his father reported that some things were turned around on the mantelpiece, and the spot on the windowsill where she placed the glass refused to dry. And we thought, well, he drinks a lot, this can't be true. And about a week after that, I was sitting in the living room. My husband was at his office, and her music box in the corner of the room went on all by itself. And I called him up and really freaked him out. And he kind of abandoned the family in that he was up there every weekend sitting at the foot of her bed on the floor writing poetry about her, and it was sort of an emotionally incestuous relationship. Well, he began to change a lot. And what was going on was he was seeing another woman who later turned out to be the image of his mother, an older woman. And he literally turned into her.
Wow.
And he would come to the door one day screaming at me to quit using his last name. We've been together 17 years. And the next day he would forget that he even said that and be very charming. And
My God, how did you get through this?
It's still going on. My son, he spirited my son away. And my son became addicted to drugs, showed up on my doorstep last October, all into the master, and saying to me, Satan rules. And he brought with him head lice, body lice, chicken lice, and mites. And a year has gone by. I've spent $3,000 and I'm still fighting these things. My son has come and gone. Before he left, he said to me, the master has plans for your life. The next day, my brake fluid was drained. Just weird things just keep happening in this house. There's an odd smell in his room of rotten oranges. I had 2 other people stay just for brief periods of time, and there was dead smells coming from underneath. I'm still battling this at this moment.
My God. Adam's family values. Oh, man. All right. I appreciate your story, and I wish you well, ma'am. I don't know what to tell you, but I think, faced with a similar circumstance, I would give even my son under those conditions the old heave-ho. And I would try and free myself of that. Because I believe you're in a dangerous situation. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Good morning.
1 second, let me get the radio.
Yes, thank you. Turn them off the moment you get on the air, please. This is actually Coast to Coast.
Hey, Art, how you doing?
I'm fine, sir. Do you have a story for us?
Yeah, this is Dale from Portland, KN.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I'm originally from West Virginia, and I had my grandfather tell me a story a long time ago about his very grandfather told him a story of, I always get nervous on here. Okay, but they had bought some plantation down in Logan County, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a big field, and they hadn't found out this story told me by my grandfather. And my great-grandfather tried to plow up the land and everything there, and the ground was real rocky, and when they later looked, it was like makeshift little grade markers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, my grandpa told me that one night my grandfather was awakened by chains rattling and screams and stuff like that, right? That can't we at least have decent art, death and stuff?
Yes.
And my grandfather told him, he said, well, he was probably just having a dream. And he said, yeah, he could have been having a dream, but, all the grandchildren heard it too. So I was kind of like freaked out by that story, so.
I can imagine. Did he ever continue to try to plow that land?
No, they discontinued plowing that land.
I can
They
imagine.
left it alone.
I can imagine I would have too. Thank you very much for the call. I wonder why spirits, or those who have left, are in any way at all attached to or concerned with their prior physical bodies. maybe it would be true that a spirit would be still attached to, thinking about their physical body. I don't know. I mean, who knows about these things? But so many of the stories seem to concern the bodies that have been, that are now buried below the earth. On the wild card line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Oh, hello. I'm calling from San Diego.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sort of a skeptical mind about these things, and I don't believe in anything supernatural. And but just the other day, I was sitting down with my sister, and we were just talking about things. And we had one of her children, my nephew Jesse, was with us, and talking about things that things that scare him and so on. And he mentioned the ghosts, and I naturally I spoke up and I said, well, there's no such thing as ghosts. And then my sister spoke up, and we're pretty close. And she said, in all seriousness, she said, well, the ghosts are the one thing I do believe in. And she never told me this story before because she thought she would just be laughed at. But she would see these figures in this duplex that she's living at.
Yes.
And one of them is in her one of her children's bedrooms. Her other son, Casey, is 7 years old, and she would see this figure in there, and the first couple of times she would think it was Casey, and she would look in there and she saw this small child dressed in sort of with a strange hat and suspenders, and sitting on the floor playing, and she went into the to look into the doorway and said, Casey? And then Casey would say, what, Mommy? Or whatever. He'd be like in the kitchen or the living room, down the hallway, the other side of the house. And she turned around and there would be Casey. And then she would look back and the figure would be gone. And she's also seen one other figure in the hallway. She has her bedroom right off the hall. And she leaves the door open most of the time. And she would see this figure, like when she was reading a book in bed or whatever. And she would, just like out of the corner of her eye, notice this man with a dark beard, and then she would look up and be there for an instant, and then it would just disappear.
Do you have any idea what these entities are?
I have no idea, and absolutely no idea. She had never told this story before, and it's something that kind of spooked me because I just something I don't believe in, and but the fact that she was telling me with such sincerity and conviction that this had actually taken place.
What do you fancy, sir, happens to us after we die?
Well, my normal belief is simply that I'm sort of based on a rational, that the brain dies.
So in other words, you've always thought lights out, that's it, show's over.
Well, yeah, in all probability, that would be my general conviction.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for the call. That's it. Lights out, show's over. That's all there is. It seems to me less likely than the alternative that there is some sort of survival following physical death, and I do believe there is. And I do believe the story you told and others you will hear. If you have a story, we'd love to hear it. If not, sit back, dim the lights, and prepare yourself. Now, if we are lucky, back to the telephone now, and the continuation of the story we were hearing, or the confirmation of it. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm back.
You're back, okay.
And my wife is sitting here, we were discussing this, and she says, well, I was a skeptic until this happened. I didn't believe in poltergeist. Now she's here to tell you about it.
All right, put her
Here
on.
she is.
All right.
Hello.
Hi there.
I swear this story is true. I swear.
It is true.
Yep, I never ever believed in anything like this before. It is so bizarre.
And you are the one who said, that's it, folks, we're out of here?
Yep, I refused to go back. We went and stayed with relatives till we could move. I refused to spend another night there.
Wow.
I wouldn't go back.
Well, I must say, I am with you, and I would have been the person first saying, we're out of here.
Yeah, well, it happened for like 2 weeks before any of us ever mentioned it to each other. We'd all been having like little episodes separately. And then me and my mother-in-law were sitting there one night, and I said, what's going on? And the cabinet door was opening and closing in the kitchen.
Oh, boy.
And that's when we discussed with each other, because we think we're living here with a ghost.
Well, I can imagine that would occur, that everybody would have little things that would occur to them, and you kind of dismiss them or
Well, yeah, because you don't want to believe it.
You don't
At
wanna
first, you never
believe it.
want to believe it.
That's right. But then you start putting it all together and you all see
And it is, and it just, too much started happening.
Look, I appreciate your confirmation. It's really kind of you to come on the phone, and thank you both. Thank your husband for me.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. There you are, folks. That's me. I think I would have left. On the one hand, I would like to have the experience. I would like to experience something that I would definitely call an apparition, something that would confirm for me the afterlife. But on the other hand, it would scare the pants off me, and I think I'd be out of there as quickly as possible. On the first-time caller line, good morning. You are on the air.
Yeah, I'm calling from Overland Park, Kansas.
Overland Park, Kansas, on a portable telephone.
Yeah, sorry about that. Got a really strange story. This happened to me. I'm 22 years old now. I was between 14 and 16 years old. True story. I was in my parents' house, which we had built. You know, nobody lived there before. And my parents had gone on a walk for the evening with my brothers and sisters, and I was sitting at home. And I remember it was a Thursday night because I was watching Simon & Simon. I'm watching TV, and I just got a feeling of disorientation around me. It's really strange. And there's plants hanging above the television set. And I look up, and this thing is distracting me, and it was like if you would see it's almost invisible shape going through the plant. Okay, just something.
An invisible shape going through the plants?
Yeah, it's the only way I can explain it is
You mean as though you could see the plants moving aside for something that was moving in them?
it was as if inside the little shape that was moving, it was like a swirled clear color. You could tell something was there moving really fast, and it was just gone.
I understand.
And I just got a really odd feeling, disorientation around me, and I kind of, I'm looking around, just turning around, looking around, having this odd feeling. And I turn back and look behind me down the hall, and down the hall, there's a figure standing there, just as plain as day, nothing you could see through, solid, and it was not facing it, it was facing a different direction out into the hall. And I'm getting goosebumps just like I'm just talking about this, but this figure was standing about 6'5", 7 feet tall. I couldn't tell, it didn't look like anything was touching the ground. And it was a white figure. It had the head of this figure was like almost like a knight in armor helmet.
Ooh, that's weird.
But it was completely white. And just the saw, just a shiny white. And the helmet came down kind of around his chest. And there's a white robe hanging down off of the helmet. And so it went down almost to the floor. I don't know if it's touched the floor. It was just always with a white robe with this helmet, and it was facing a different direction. And as I sat there and stared at it and just could not move, it slowly turned towards me. Just pivoting, no leg movement or anything, just moving towards me. Just not moving towards me, but just turning towards me. And as it faced me, I was just so scared. I closed my eyes and opened my eyes, and it was gone. And
now I'm curious, at that moment, you closed your eyes and opened them and it was gone. A lot of people would say to themselves, you know, that means I was imagining it.
right, nothing like that has ever happened to me before. You know, no traumas in my life to do anything like that. And when it turned to me, it fully was a matter of 5 or 7 seconds as it turned. I was watching it turn towards me, and it turned towards me, and it was gone. And I just sat there, you know, curled right next to the TV until my parents came home. It was just gotten dark, and I just sat there for 20 minutes or so, just not moving, just shaking. And
I do understand, sir. When this occurred, did you have a feeling of evil or fright, or how would you describe your emotions?
No evil. My emotions were just, I don't know what was happening, and there's just a feeling around me, just a tingling feeling, just like, what is going on? Because nothing's ever happened to me, like that in this house before, and it seems like no reason for it. I've never heard a story like that before.
Well, a young lady called earlier and said too scared to scream, to actually make noise.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's just a feeling of awe. you don't think about it when it's happening at all. You don't think about it until it's over with, and then it's just frightening.
I appreciate your story, thank you. It was a Sunday night. I worked the graveyard shift and got done getting ready for work a little early. Since I had about a half hour to kill, I sat down, put on the headphones to listen to the stereo. As I relaxed, I got that eerie feeling that someone was watching me. Couldn't resist the feeling, so I turned around and saw someone run down the hall. I knew my roommate was out for the night, but thought, well, maybe he'd come home and was playing a trick on me. Went down the hall, turned on all the lights, called out to him, no response. Okay, my mind is playing tricks on me. So I sat down and put the headphones back on. I started getting that strange feeling again that someone was watching me. This time I turned around quickly and again saw someone run back down the hall. At this point I was getting scared. I ran out of the apartment, went to work. Later called my roommate, told him what happened. He told me I was cracked. The next day seemed fairly normal. I went to bed around noon. About 7 that night I was awakened by the sound of a girl crying. It was dark in my room, but I could see the living room lights from under the door. I thought to myself, my roommate and his girlfriend had gotten into a fight. I lay there for a while, and the crying continued. The more I listened, I could tell that the crying wasn't coming from the living room. So I sat up in bed, and there was a girl sitting on the chair in my bedroom. She was about 16 years old, wearing a blue dress from the late 1800s, long blonde hair, and crying. When I asked her who she was and what was wrong, she looked at me with a frightened look, stood up and disappeared right into the wall. I came running out of the bedroom. My roommate was sitting quietly watching TV. I told him what had just happened. He, of course, didn't see or hear any of it, didn't believe me. Never saw the girl again. To this day, I have no explanation as to what happened. That's from Pat in Scottsdale, Arizona, listening to KFYI. Thanks, Pat. That's a hair curler. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Art.
Yes, sir. Where are you calling from?
I'm listening off of San Antonio, WOAI.
Yes, sir. And where are you?
Well, I'm in Denver, Art. I can't listen that late on Sundays here.
No, I understand. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't know how scary this is, but it's true. One night I was sleeping and I woke up to find myself, you talk about feeling a presence, and it wasn't a divine presence, but it felt kind of ominous to me. In fact, I was kind of frightened, but I felt like a weight on top of my body, and I started feeling myself spinning on the bed, which, like I said, it did frighten me, and I wasn't having any of it, so I started, not that I'm particularly, well, I am religious, but anyway, I started reciting the Lord's Prayer, but it wasn't having any effect, and I said to myself, well, geez, what a good this does, you know. And
Oh, ye of little faith, I'm tempted to say. In other words, you tried the Lord's Prayer once, and when the weight was still
well, no, I
there.
was repeating it over again in my head.
Okay.
Then I found myself making a sign of the cross with my arm, this just big, gigantic sign of the cross. And the interesting thing is this. I had the bedroom door closed, and this Labrador, who's passed on, her name was Angel, black Labrador. The door was closed, I didn't make any noise. She just started barking her head off. And I just felt that whatever it was at that time had left, and then these geese a quarter of a mile from the house started squawking their heads off. And I thought to myself, well, did they hear Angel barking? Or, you know, did they? I just kind of imagined that whatever this was flew over them, but that's the story.
All right, sir. I thank you. And again, it's the sense or the feeling, and another story with regard to a dog. Isn't that interesting? Animals do seem to feel things that, or feel them earlier than we do, or are more aware of them, and it has to do with the fact that they are closer to nature than are we. Even though they may live in homes with us, they don't partake of the 20th century the way we do. and all the noise and the inherent interruption that we have, and so they are faster to sense a presence. There are some people, though, that are rather sensitive to this sort of thing, and they feel it early and quickly, as an animal would. But for most of us, an animal is a pretty good monitor. Haven't you ever felt something that your dog first felt? It'll get up and start to bark, or your cat will totally freak out, or whatever animal you have around, and then you'll feel it. Something's close, something's near, there's a presence. Maybe nothing more than that. They feel it first, usually. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Good morning. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Turn your radio off, please. And tell us where you're calling from.
Granite City, Illinois.
Okay, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I was raised in this house from when I was born up until the age of 13. And there was like plates would fly off of the table and smash into like the cabinet. And there would be like cold spots in the house and different smells. Sometimes it would be like real foul odors, and then other times it would be like real sweet smells.
Sounds like a poltergeist.
Well, I don't know, but it was very, very scary.
How could you live in such a house?
Because I was a child, I had really no choice to move out.
Well, what did your mother and your father say?
Oh, well, we all experienced the different things. We would hear like footsteps walking up the steps.
Did you actually see a plate lift and fly off a table?
Yes, and also coffee cups, like the real thick coffee cups would like smash into the metal cabinet and leave big dents.
Wow.
And my parents had, I don't remember what you called them, but they came into like dry valve ghosts. And I guess there was probably about 4 of them that came in, and they felt more presence in the basement. And someone had said that there was a person that had hung himself in the basement. Most of the activity happened in the basement.
Yes.
And doors would slam, and we had a dog, and the dog would like start watching something, that we couldn't see in the room.
Right.
And I was, the day that we moved out of the house, that was one of the happiest days of my life.
How long did that go on?
Until we moved.
Which was how long?
13 years.
13 years?
Mm-hmm. After the people that came in to drive out whatever was in the house, the activities kind of slowed down a little bit for a short time, but then it started again. And I don't think anyone lived in that house for very long periods of time.
Is that in the state of Illinois?
Yes, it is.
Well, that's quite a story, and I'm glad you made it through it all right. I don't think I could have handled 13 years of that, or even 13 days.
Well, now, if I move into a new house, if I have any, if I feel any presence, there is no way that I would live there.
Thank you very much for the call. Do you know that in a lot of states, there is now actually on the books a law that requires you to notify anybody who might be considering buying this house that it is haunted? Did you know that? There is actually a law of that sort, and there have been court cases that people have won because there was not notification given of a haunting. Can you imagine living with that for 13 years? And on our toll-free line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Art Bell. How are you doing?
Just fine. Where are you?
I'm in Seattle, Washington.
Seattle. Uh-oh. We're holding this line for east of the Rockies, sir, until 2 a.m. Pacific.
Okay, I'll call back.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. On the wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hi, Art. How you doing?
Just fine. Where are you?
I'm in Lexington.
Lexington, Kentucky. Excellent.
Got 2 stories for you.
All right.
One was when I graduated from tech school when I was in the Air Force. Me and a wife boarded a plane in Chicago, and so she was telling me about the aircraft, and as we boarded, there was 2 pilots sitting in the back.
And I said, well, we can talk to them, later on when we get airborne. Because there was a technicality that she didn't quite understand on the aircraft.
Yes.
Well, the plane took off and everything, and the seatbelt deal came off, and I said, let's step back there and talk to them. And we looked around, and they were gone. So I said to the airline stewardess, I said, ma'am, I said, where did the pilot go? She said, what pilot? I said, the two pilots in the back. And the girl sitting with me said, yeah, we've seen two of them. She said, wait right here, I'll be right back. And she ran and got two stewards to come back. She said, tell them exactly what you told me. And so I told her, she told the other two, and the one started crying and got all upset and I had to take her to the back. Do you recall the aircraft that crashed in the Everglades?
Very well, sir.
That's what part of that was.
Oh, God. I've heard a lot of stories like this. And I think there are many. I have a very good friend that works for a major company, which I can't name. And when he retires from this company, I'm going to have him on the air, and we're going to tell some of these stories. But you are exactly right. That particular crash.
I think it was Flight 401, wasn't it?
401 or 409.
They were chalky white-looking, the individuals, but they looked solid.
Listen to me. I'm telling you, I've heard privately told, not for attribution, stories just like the one you're telling me right now, and it's going on to this day. Aircraft are haunted.
Oh, okay.
And it's because of that particular crash and a few others. And
well, they cannibalize the parts, don't they, and put them in the other aircraft?
You see, yeah, that's right. You see spirits that lose their lives unexpectedly, as in an air crash.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're the ones that tend to be troubled, possibly remain on this earth, possibly haunt at the location of their death, in this case, an aircraft.
Well, the second story has to do with a place in Tennessee called Cookville, and it happened this summer. We moved into a trailer park, into a little trailer, and it was really clean. It was a nice little trailer. No air conditioning, though. It was when it was real hot. And the first night I got up to go to the restroom, it was about 1 or 2 in the morning in the bathroom. I stepped on in through the living room, and of course we had the windows open. There was an alley by the trailer, and I heard a girl laughing. And I thought, what in the world? About 2 in the morning. I looked out and I didn't see anybody. So I went to the bathroom, and then I came back, and the next morning I was telling my friend about it, and she said probably just somebody outside. And I said okay. And our cat kept his head riveted to this one spot in the living room. He, when you picked him up, it was like a joke. His head was just riveted back and forth on this one spot. Pivot.
I understand.
Anyways, later on, one of the neighbors had finally told us that the reason they couldn't keep that trailer rented was because a girl was brutally murdered there a year before. Okay, so we were, I said, well, we got to get out of here eventually. I don't want to stay in this trailer because we kept hearing bangs and knocks and different things. And so we were sitting there, this was in the afternoon too, we were sitting there arguing about the doors being open. We had both doors open in this trailer because we didn't have air conditioning.
Okay, very quickly now.
And I said, why don't you close the door? And she said, why don't you do it? And about that time, the door just slammed shut. And I just turned around and I said, thank you.
That'd be enough for me.
Well, we moved. We got the heck out of there, but that trailer definitely had some problems. But it was so weird the way that cat would just watch that. And then
I know, they know. Sir,
Yeah.
I've got to go.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much for the call. Have a good morning. This is Ghost to Ghost AM.
Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the CBC Radio Network. Now, once again, here's Art.
Good morning. Those stations just joining us, you have missed 2 hours of pure ghost stories. We will continue in a moment. The night is yours. The weekend is here. It's Halloween weekend, and this is the annual Ghost Show. The only thing we take all night long are ghost stories, and we've had some youth so far, believe me. Here is one just faxed in, and you are welcome to fax in a ghost story if you have one. They're better when they're short, and I would appreciate that. The fax number, area code 702-727-8499. 702-727-8499. Here are, this is a true story as well as I can recall it. In 1973, as a member of the U.S. Air Force, I was stationed at Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma. During that particular year, the author Peter Blatty's novel, The Exorcist, was the hit movie of the season, as well as the paperback version of the screenplay. The paperback was distributed throughout the barracks that I lived in, one resident at a time, as we did in those days. When it was my turn to read the novel, I read it with much anticipation, as well as much anxiety. The following night, around about 5 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened by the sensation of something pounding on the lower bunk that I slept in. It was moving up my torso. At that time, I didn't have a roommate, but the sensation frightened me so much that I got out of my bunk, scrambled to the door, opened it, and yelled for help as loud as I could. Not one of my barracks mates in our building heard my screams of help, not one, or cooperated my version of the story. But to this day, I believe the incident was very real, an actual occurrence. I don't tempt mirrors or taboos of that nature to this day, maybe in San Diego. And this, Art, in January of 1976, I was busy cleaning the kitchen after dinner. The kids were in the living room watching TV, and my husband, a cop at the time, had returned to work. Suddenly I heard a voice calling my name, Carol Ann. It sounded like my grandfather, who lived in Indiana. I was in Mesa, Arizona. Regardless of how old I am, he always called me by both my first and middle name. About 15 minutes after this episode, the telephone rang. It was my sister in California. She was calling to tell me that my grandfather had passed away about an hour before. Since I had always been very close to my grandfather, I just figured he'd passed through to see me before he went on. It had been a couple of years since I'd seen him. In July of '80, I had a dream about both my grandparents, and they were in their wedding clothes, young, and dancing and laughing and having a wonderful time. The next morning, my mom called me to inform me that Grandma had just passed away during the night. I think she came to me, let me know she was glad and was with Granddad again, and both were very happy. Back to the phones. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Yeah, Art, this is Radical Rudy in St. Louis.
Hi there, Radical Rudy.
How you doing?
Fine.
I'm talking to you on my Troquet, listening to you on my 818 CS.
Excellent.
Say, this happened in 1972, Art. I was out near Gallup, New Mexico, actually in a little town called Chinle, Arizona, on the Indian Reservation.
Oh, yes.
And I was a surveyor. I was out there with my boss one night in the fall of the year, probably about this time of the year. And he was on one mountain ridge and I was on the other. And we were surveying back and forth across this valley. And he kept saying, "Do you hear those wolves?" And I said, "Man, I don't hear any wolves." And he said, he said these Indians supposedly can turn into a wolf. He said, "I hope there's no burial grounds over there by you." And I was in a Jeep and the top was off of it. And I was sitting there, it was kind of warm, and I was starting to get spooked a little bit, because I had never seen anything weird or anything. But I'm sitting there in the Jeep, and I got my arm hanging out the window, talking to my boss on the radio, and all of a sudden something started licking on my hand. I almost panicked. I jerked my hand up, and I looked out, and it was an old hound dog. But I'm telling you, that seat was very unclean for several days.
I'm with you. All right.
It really scared me.
Thank you very much for that. I can imagine it would. I mean, you're set up for that. You're always hanging out. That's actually kind of funny. I appreciate the story, sir. What we're telling are true, real ghost stories for the most part. That was an almost ghost story. And I'm sure that the emotion you felt at that moment was very real. You can get psychologically set up for something like that, which may have happened to him and certainly may have occurred also to the man who is reading The Exorcist. I mean, cannot be a better setup than that. The Exorcist had to be one of the most frightening movies ever done. And to this day, I believe The Exorcist is one of the most frightening movies ever made. And if you sit down and watch it today, it will scare you as much as it did then. There was something about it that no other ghost film quite ever lived up to. And I'm not sure what it was. I believe it had to do with the church and its involvement. I'm not exactly sure. But nothing has quite ever lived up to it. The other film that I thought was very frightening was the original Poltergeist. Very well done. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Hello.
Art Bell?
Yes.
This is the Agile Independent from Austin, Texas on the mighty WOAI.
Austin, Texas. Yes, sir.
When I was a kid, about 7 years old, I stayed with my Aunt Marie in the country.
Yes.
It was a pretty nice thing, except for when we had to go to church. This is a ghost story. Well, a kind of one.
Okay.
They were charismatic, and they would run around and act real silly in church, and so they'd make all us kids stay in the back of the church where we could see them be silly, and we'd get really bored. So one day we decided to do something as a group, us kids, to offend them. So we found this pin and this little salamander lizard, and we nailed it to the wall, and we told them that if God didn't accept this sacrifice, we were giving it to Satan. And naturally they got really upset, but they didn't do anything terribly bad. The next night when I was asleep, for some reason I bolted straight away. And I kept my room really clean. Well, actually I didn't, my Aunt Marie did. And when I looked into my closet, there was this thing sitting there. This thing, I mean, if it weren't for the way this thing looked, I would have thought it was a nightmare.
What was it?
It was, if you can imagine something that's four-dimensional, it's a pitch black room, and this thing is so dark I can clearly see it. I mean, it was kind of like black light, and along the edges of it was kind of, if you could see its edges, because it's like the very air around it was repelled by it, like it found it obscene, and it's like the very matter around it just was repelling from it.
Oof, that'd do it for me.
Well, the only thing about it that actually looked physical was its teeth. It was a triangle with a slit up the center that ended in a little round thing. And when I looked into its eyes, which at first looked like kind of pools of light blood swimming around, it's as if it got two blue dots that looked just like my eyes that were in the center of it. And the longer I looked at it, the faster my heart began to beat. I got so scared I tried to yell out and scream for help. And I couldn't. My voice just stopped. I couldn't.
I understand that kind of fright. So frightening you cannot scream, not out loud.
Exactly. So the last thing I did was cried out to God for help in my head. It was all I could do. And the next thing I knew, it was morning and I was laying down in bed. And I don't remember any time passing between those events.
Could it have been just a nightmare?
That would have been my attitude. Except for one thing.
Yes?
Nothing on earth could look like this thing. Oh, and in the morning I looked into where the only other antidote to the story was that I did open the closet because it was closed again when I woke up. And my toys were piled end on end.
Oh.
And my toys were kept very, very straight and neat. That was the other thing. They were always lined up very neatly on little shelves in the back. And they were totally jumbled as if someone had deliberately turned them over and upside down, but none of them were broken.
That'd be it for me, partner.
Yeah, I mean, but no. Try to imagine something that's four-dimensional and that the very environment around it just finds it obscene and repels from it.
I
Imagine
understand.
your eyes being sucked into this thing and seeing your own eyes looking back at you.
No, thank you. I appreciate the story.
You're welcome.
Thank you, from Austin, Texas. Well, this will sound silly to you, I suppose, but my wife knows. She may not know why until I tell you now. I know she's listening in the next room. I always close closet doors. I don't like closets. Closets are dark places where if anything was going to come, I would think it would come. And I always close closets before I go to sleep. Now, what is it about closets? They're dark areas from which things come. Everybody knows that. No, it's just a habit. I don't like open closet doors, and so before I go to bed, I always go over and close them. And that's why. Probably shouldn't admit that, though. But it is true. On the wild card line, you're on the air. Hello. Hello there. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. On the wild card line, let's see, number 2, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. This is Henry in Cap.
Hello, Henry.
I like your program tonight. Very interesting.
Oh, yes.
I've lived in a haunted house now for 36 years.
Why? That's what I always ask. Why would somebody stay in a haunted house?
Well, you get used to it.
What kind of haunting?
Well, there's 6 different ghosts. And it took me about 20 years of research to find out what happened on the property. And there was a tragedy, 2 different tragedies, one in 1903 and another in 1906.
It's always an early death, unexpected death.
Violent death by fire, both cases.
Oh, boy.
And so, with the property came the ghosts.
Well, what kind of haunting has it been?
Everything. Doors opening and closing. I've never seen them physically. I see their shadows. And there are 3 sisters that were killed in the fire in 1906. And they run through the house frequently at night. One time I had an aunt staying with me, and the girls ran through the house back and forth for 6 hours straight.
Really?
Yeah, my aunt never came back.
Oh, I wouldn't either. That's frightening stuff, and it goes on to this day?
Oh, yes.
And you never quite see them, their shadows?
Mm-hmm. And doors open and close every day, and lamps lift up, set back down every day.
Lift up into the air?
Yeah.
How do you handle that? I mean, how do you stand it?
You believe it or not, you get used to it. I mean, you just take it as something that happens as a part of living.
Haven't you ever thought of having a priest in to try and stop it?
It's never been threatening enough to, in my opinion, call a priest in. I have tried to communicate with them.
No offense, but I don't know how you sleep at night. I mean, it may not have done anything yet, but if those spirits are there, well, of course, that's you.
They're there, but they're not harmful. They're just, they don't realize they're dead because of the way they died.
Oh, I've often wondered about that, whether spirits do realize they are dead.
They don't. The worst part of the whole haunting is when there was one particular time, it's been about 15 years ago, I heard a man screaming, a terrible scream. It was in my bedroom. I could hear the screaming, and I ran outside, and it was quiet outside, no sound at all. And when I went back inside, the screaming was still going on. And it was later when I finally found a witness to the events that had happened. And she said, "Oh, that was the man when they couldn't get to him when he was dying. He was screaming."
Oh my God! All right, thank you very much for the story. See, that's a chilling one. I wouldn't stay in a home like that, would you? Well, look, because it's topical, I'll tell you, the best ghost photograph, no, the 2 best ghost photographs that I have ever seen, we put originally on computer services for those with computers to download them. Many have seen them, but most of you have not. These ghost photographs are in our new newsletter, and the premiere edition of the newsletter is about to come out. And particularly the one by the Stone Mason is probably, in my opinion, the best photograph of an entity that I've ever seen. As a matter of fact, let me take just a moment out and read you the letter that accompanied the photograph that appears in the newsletter. Dear Art, first let me thank you for your daily program and Dreamland. A week or so ago, I heard you talking about the Halloween show with a listener. I missed most of it, but if you're interested in ghosts, here is a photograph that might be one. A friend of mine who is a stone mason was working on an old home in L.A. On finishing the wine cellar in the old existing basement, he photographed his work for his scrapbook. When he developed the pictures, this is what showed up on one. He didn't see anything when the photo was taken. However, on questioning the architect, he was told that 3 crews, carpenters and so forth, had walked off the project. It seemed they felt very cold air. Some were pushed down the stairs by an unseen force. Since these photos were taken, I've talked to the architect and was told the home is about 100 years old and was listed for sale after the man who lived there died. The architect also told me that a Chinese man was interested in buying the home, but when they brought their priests to okay the home, and the Chinese do that, and bless it, they left in a big hurry, screaming. Evidently the new owner, who's having it completely renovated, knows about the ghost, but does not know what has happened to the workmen, nor have they seen this photo. The friend of mine who took the photograph is a Muslim, a very religious man who does not have any interest or belief in ghosts. Just thought you'd like to see it. And he's got the negative. And I must tell you, you have never seen anything like it. I'm going to be very interested in your opinions when you get this newsletter. So it's in there, and in fact, a lot more is in our premier newsletter. There's a Dreamland report, for example, with a big story on Richard Hoagland, a big interview with Richard Hoagland. The key photographs of the moon from Richard Hoagland are also in there. There'll be a number of stories, one about the crime bill. There'll be a story from me, a story that I've written for the newsletter that I think is pretty hard-hitting. It's pretty rough stuff. I hope you enjoy it. There's Behind the Scenes by Alan Corbett, the president of our network. There will be a complete listing of radio stations for Coast to Coast and Dreamland. There will be article after article after article, and already it is growing. It will begin at 16 pages or more, and you can get it now by ordering right now or anytime our brand new newsletter entitled After Dark. It's going to be a real downtown production. You can order right now. It's just $29.95. It'll come to you every single month, and that will get you an entire year. If you have Visa or MasterCharge, you can call in fact, you can call right now, and I recommend before this premiere edition is exhausted, you get in on this. 1-800-917-4278. That's 1-800-917-4278 if you have Visa or MasterCard. If not, send $29.95 in a check or money order to Chancellor Broadcasting, 744 East Pine, Central Point, Oregon, 97502. $29.95 to Chancellor Broadcasting, 744 East Pine, like pine tree, Central Point, Oregon, 97502. Now, those of you who just joined us at 1 a.m. Pacific Time will not yet have had enough of a chance. You've heard a couple of stories. But cumulatively, since 11 p.m. Pacific Time, I don't see how you could listen to this. And these people, many of them very articulate, very serious, and very honest, and not begin to believe that there is something that follows this life for some, if not all. That's what we're doing. It's Halloween weekend, and we're telling ghost stories. Real ghost stories. Keep listening. Dim the lights if you dare. If you can't handle it, turn it off. We'll be back. 6 a.m. I'm Art Bell. We're telling ghost stories, real ones. Join us if you dare. I've got a whole pile of faxes here of very good ghost stories. I guess ask and ye shall receive, and I'll kind of get to them as I can this morning. On the wild card line, you're on the air. Hello.
Good morning, Art.
Good morning, sir.
This is Mick from Phoenix.
Great.
I'm not real sure if this is a ghost story or not.
Well, tell it and we'll let you know.
In the summer of '77, I woke up about 2:30 in the morning because my girlfriend was out of bed. So I walked into the living room to find out what was wrong, and she was sitting on the couch, naked, with her knees pulled up under her chin and her eyes about the size of saucers and looking at me like I'd grown 3 or 4 extra heads. So I said, what's wrong? What's going on? She says, don't do that to me. Well, it took a little while, but she finally told me that what had happened was she heard me talking and she thought I was in my sleep. She rolled over towards me and she said, you're as stiff as this coffee table and as cold as an ice box. I said, what do you mean? She says, I don't know. I said, I got up and took a look and you're laying there in bed, stiff. Your mouth's a little bit open, but your lips aren't moving and you're carrying on a conversation with a little boy and a woman. And I can hear them talking back to you when you're talking to a third person, another woman, but I can't hear her.
Oh boy, I guess I'd have done the same thing. I'd be up and out.
Well, I guess so. Anyway, apparently I sat and carried on this conversation with a little boy and a woman, with my mouth not moving, being as stiff as a board and as cold as the freezer, for about 5 or 10 minutes, and she sat there and listened to a little bit of it, and then went out to the living room, and she could hear all of us talking. And it definitely spooked her, and it affected our relationship considerably. Most of the conversation concerned whether or not the woman that she could hear, where she had left her glasses, why she wasn't wearing them. And what it all hinged from was 6 months earlier, my wife, our son, and her mother were all killed in a car accident.
Oh my gosh.
And no one could tell me exactly what happened. So I knew a private investigator, and I asked him, how can I find out what happened? And he laid out all the rules and where I went and what I had to go and who I had to see and what kind of papers I had to get.
Right.
And I went off and spent about a month doing that, and I found out exactly what happened to them and why. Except I could never figure out why I couldn't find her glasses anywhere in around the car at the accident scene. And so I don't know if it was my brain working with a problem who finally said, look, I'm going to give it an answer so you'll stop working on it, or if something supernatural actually happened.
Well, we'll let people decide for themselves, but I think I'd be opting for the latter.
The only reason I lean to it is because apparently the way I felt to her scared her more than the voices. She thought I was dead.
Thank you for the call, sir. That was a good story. I don't know. You tell me, folks. What happened to that man? Hi, Art. My cousin and her husband bought a house in a suburb of Phoenix about 6 years ago. They and their 2 kids, plus another cousin of mine, moved in right away. My cousin, who we will call Linda, found herself at home all night with only the kids. Linda's husband worked the graveyard shift, and her brother took a job in Laughlin. That'd be Laughlin, Nevada. The night in question was just like any other, until her 4-year-old son came into the room and woke her up. She was not facing him when he woke her up, and she did not immediately turn around. She asked him what he wanted, and he told her he couldn't sleep because somebody was in his room. She told him, of course there is. You share your room with your brother. He told her it's not his brother. It's some guy he doesn't know. At this point, she turned around to look at him, and when she did, she saw a man standing behind her son. She described him as wearing a plaid cowboy shirt, blue jeans, and a cowboy hat. She said she could see right through him to the doorway behind. She said that he was white, kind of glowing. She said a lot like you see in the movies. She immediately jumped out of bed and he was gone. She grabbed both of her sons and went to her mother's house. Her brother claimed to have seen him about 2 weeks later. Much more than I can tell here. Great show. We've got our candles burning. Gary and Sandy at KFYI in Phoenix. First time caller line, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi Art. That last story was really good. I got a Ouija board story for you.
Oh, Ouija boards.
You don't like them?
I have no comment. Go ahead with your story.
This story was told to me by my friend Ryan in the utmost seriousness, and it literally made my heart skip a beat. It was told to me about when he was 16, and he has an older brother who was about 21 at the time, and their parents were gone for the weekend. And so his older brother had a couple friends come over, and they decided they were going to do the Ouija board thing. So they put a Ouija board down, and they played with it a little bit, and they decided that they were going to let people do it alone. Okay, one person do it at a time. And in this group of friends, there was a couple, jokers that used to mess around, and there was one guy that they knew was always honest, and so they put him on the board. All right, and so they put him on the board, and my friend was in the corner just kind of watching. Now, a couple years earlier, about 2 or 3 years earlier, their grandfather had been in a terrible car accident. His name was Barry, okay? Now, he had been in a car accident and was in a coma, and he had been in a coma since. And they didn't predict that he was going to come out of this coma anytime soon. And you know how those kind of comas are, and it just keeps going and going and going.
Sure.
So, his older brother decides to call and see if he can find Barry. And his friend, who had never met Barry, was on the Ouija board, alone, and it was not moving. And he starts saying, "Barry, Grandpa Barry, are you around? Are you with us? Grandpa Barry, are you around? Are you with us?" All of a sudden, the Ouija board starts moving a little bit. And what my friend told me is that they just felt the biggest chill come into the room. And a real slight little wind was kind of blowing through the room, very slight. And everyone was just getting goosebumps and looking at each other like they knew something was going on.
Something was there.
Yeah. And so it starts spelling out things. They say, "Are you Grandpa Barry?" And it says, "Yes." And the guy has his eyes shut, who's alone on the Ouija board. All right, his eyes are shut. And it starts going around, and it starts spelling out, "I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. It's cold, it's dark." Okay? And it kept saying that for about maybe a couple minutes. "I'm scared, it's dark, I'm cold." And they were just freaking out. I mean, looking at each other, and they were just about to grab their friend. Their friend started sweating. It was on the Ouija board. He was sweating, and his fingers were shaking on the thing.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, it just started going real quick, and it said, "Keep praying, keep praying, keep praying, keep praying," until it was too fast that he couldn't even keep his hands on it. And they grabbed their friend, and when he opened his eyes, he had no idea what happened. He was almost in a kind of a shock. And my friend told me that I was one of the only people that he had told that story to, because it scared him so much.
I can understand. I appreciate the story, sir. Thank you. And that is the Ouija board. And I think that Ouija boards are nothing to play with. I think that when you use a Ouija board, you invite the possibility of a real danger. That and I don't even know that it is specifically the Ouija board. It's just that you have put yourself in such a receptive mood, in such a non-specifically receptive mood, that anything may show up. Ouija boards, mirrors, things that put you in a receptive mood, I think you do at your own risk. I mean it. Hi, Art. The following is more a premonition than a ghost story, but very strange and very true. In 1974, my husband's baby brother, 27 years old, had gone to visit some of his friends who owned a bar in Biloxi, Mississippi. He didn't drink. It was like to hang out with friends. A young woman walked into the bar. She'd been roller skating and had fallen. She was about 3 months pregnant and was having some discomfort. Her husband was in the military overseas. My brother-in-law did not know this woman, but offered to drive her home, and she accepted. On the way, they were hit by a drunk driver and killed instantly. Later that day, my mother-in-law walked into his bedroom. Lying on his dresser in plain sight were his life insurance papers, instructions explaining how to distribute his personal effects, detailed instructions explaining how he wanted to be buried, and a list of people to contact in case of death. Art, I realize it sounds strange, but it's the truth. Linda in Metairie, Louisiana. On the toll-free line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi, Art.